Hello, this is the Photographing the West podcast, episode number 91. I'm your host, Kirby Flanagan. I'm a wildlife and nature photographer with a podcast, a newsletter, and a nature-based clothing line. If you're new here, welcome. If you're an old timer, welcome back. Today, I'm happy to welcome back Canadian wildlife photographer and Nikon Ambassador, Michelle Valberg. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Kirby. Thanks for having me again.
It's my pleasure. Believe me. So you're well known for your Arctic wildlife photography, but you also maintain a portrait studio. How do you manage to keep both going with business and your busy schedule?
Yeah, it's been a struggle for the last number of years trying to manage both worlds of wildlife and nature and portrait. I am glad though that I have maintained my photography studio in my city. I was in January about to really give up a lot of the work that I was doing in order to concentrate full time on the wildlife side of my business. And, I returned, I went to Africa in February, and then I returned from Vancouver Island in March to the world changing. And, for months we weren't obviously able to work. And after 4 months of isolation and being closed, we were able to get back and being able to offer my services back in the studio while not out necessarily working in the wildlife world has certainly been a huge gift for me. So certainly thankful that I never did let it go. How I manage the two of them, well, it's been a struggle. And in the past, I've had a photography studio with that I employed people, and that we did everything from weddings and bar mitzvahs, events, um, commercial work, and headshots. There wasn't anything that we'd say no to. So I transitioned into a more collaborative effort, um, working with other photographers. So that has helped a great deal as well, because when I'm not able to do the job, I'm able to offer it to one of my colleagues.
Yeah, good. Sounds like a great arrangement. So you were mentioning earlier that the portrait business has kind of supported you while the wildlife business has gone pretty quiet.
Yeah, and I'm hugely thankful, and I think it's so important for us all as photographers to be versatile, to be able to do other kinds of work while maybe we're being stalled in other directions that we typically go in. So I have always had that frame of mind with photography. I've done it all my life for over 30 years. I studied it, and it's the only thing that I've ever wanted to do other than be a golf pro. And since that didn't work out, so yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to revisit the roots that I've had for so long. And you know, for people who are wanting to go out and be a wildlife photography, it's not an easy thing to just say I'm going to be a wildlife photographer and I'm going to make a living out of it. So, all through the years I've had to do all of the above, that I mentioned earlier, the weddings and the bar mitzvahs. I did everything I could in photography just to make a living at it and to be able to do what I love. And then the wildlife and nature was always something that I did, but it was for myself, and that I was building my portfolio and I was building my, in my, as you know, more than anything, like I think wildlife teaches you every time you go out, and whether it's small little birds or chipmunks or whatever it is that you might have in your backyard or around the corner, to, the bigger, more elusive creatures that you're able to photograph, or I'm able to photograph out in the field. So yeah, it's a big transition over the last little while, and yeah, it's tough on everybody for sure.
Yeah, agreed. So talking about the wildlife business a little more, what are your sources of income as far as wildlife photography?
So I have a number of different things. Like I sell my work. People purchase my work. I sell my work to the Canadian government, so they're in embassies all over the world, and of course they're always looking for nature and wildlife. And I've gone to the Arctic over 59 times. I was going to be, well, not over 59 times, 59 times. It was going to be my 60th time. Right now, I was supposed to be in the Arctic with Abercrombie and Kent. So that's, I sell my work, and then I work for as a resource photographer for a number of companies like Abercrombie and Kent, Adventure Canada, Frontiers North Adventures. So I'm their photographic guide, and I'm able to have these amazing adventures and be able to meet some fantastic people and teach along the way. And then I have my own workshops and I build my own trips as well. So it's just a multitude of different ways that you can bring in income as a wildlife photographer. And again, just being versatile and making sure that you're offering your services in many different directions, so you can actually do what you love.
Yeah. So how's the photography business doing in Canada these days?
The photography business in Canada is, I think, slowly coming back in the pandemic, if we're talking about that. But overall, it's hugely competitive and has been for since the start of digital. Everybody's a photographer for sure, and the competition is fierce, and people are coming into the business more so all the time, thinking that, hey, I'm going to be a photographer. I have a camera. I take good pictures. But it's so much more than that in photography. It's not taking good pictures. There's a lot more to it. And the world is competitive in so many different ways in every profession. So it's been challenging, but I'm certainly glad that I have the years that I have in my pocket, because I'm able to continue doing the work that I do based on the reputation that I've had over the last number of years. And people come back, and I've been involved in the community and my community in many different ways through charitable giving to, working on boards or being on boards, having exhibitions, and just going to events, and just really being out there. So, as much as you can take good pictures, you really have to be community oriented, and you have to really work at getting your name out there and getting known for sure. So it's a process, and it's a crazy world that we live in right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. So talk a little bit more about the business of photography. Most people go into it with the idea they're going to be out photographing in the field the whole time, and most professional photographers at least tell you that you're in the office about 95% of the time.
Yeah, you're at the computer way more than you ever were in the past. But since when I was transitioning and I was doing more work and I was traveling much more, I had photographers that worked for me. I had the staff. I had the studio. I had the expenses. But as I was starting to leave the studio more and more, it just wasn't working for me business wise, because it ended up that I was really coming back to shoot in the studio to really maintain my payroll taxes, my lease expenses, and all the other expenses that go along with the studio. So it wasn't making sense for me anymore financially. And wanting to do both worlds, and knowing how important the portrait photography world was for me still, I decided that I would make a change, and my lease was coming due, so I let it go. I let go of my full-time employees, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, because Val had worked for me for over 10 years, and she was committed, and she was a wonderful person and photographer. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. But once I did, I went to a friend of mine who's my colleague and my competitor and my friend for 25 years. And he had recently lost his employee, and he had a beautiful studio in the same area that mine was previously in, my studio. And so I went to him and I said, hey, listen, can I rent space from you? Can we start this collaboration? Because one of the girls that had worked for me had a baby and was on maternity, and her full intention was to start her own business. And I also had another young dynamic photographer that wanted to join forces. So he was like, yeah, let's do this. Like, let's make this happen. Let's be a collaboration. Let's be a cooperative. So we're all independent. We all have our own businesses. We all have the same drive and passion, and we all are fighting for our own photography world and life and career. So, our paths cross over. We all do portraits. Some of us have the same clients. Some of us are able to fulfill jobs that some of us aren't able to. So when I am on location or I'm going on location and I have a job coming up, I'm able to ask one of my colleagues to do it for me, and then I'm able to keep it in-house and get commission. So for all those years that I worked so hard to employ and, which I love doing, I always employed young, fabulous women photographers. As much as I love doing that, it was so much. Like, it was just took so much out of me. It was just, there were too many expenses, and I worked, every single day of every single week of every single month. There wasn't a time that I was able to let go. And so now it just makes sense, and if you're out there, if you're going out there and you want to start a photography career, join forces, or, be a part of a collaboration that you can share knowledge and you can share issues and problems, or, you can call upon somebody and say, hey, listen, I've got this job and I don't know how to quote. Can you help me? And when you can't do the job, then you're keeping it, in-house, and you're able to still profit from it because you're able to keep it in your circle, and as well what kind of work that you're referring to, or referring, from their work. So it just makes sense, right? It's a wonderful way to work, and also sharing equipment. There's oftentimes, Miv is our technical guy, so if we have issues, or, I'm looking at buying a new laptop, I just send him the specs and say, does this work? And he might need a lens from me because I turned him over to Nikon. Happy to help, so it's a wonderful way to work. So if you are starting out, that would be my recommendation, to not do it alone.
Canadian photographers must be more collaborative than U.S. photographers, because most of the ones I know, at least, are pretty independent classes.
Yeah, I guess you have to find the right person to work with, and know that, it's like keeping your enemies closer, right? It's just, they're not enemies, but they're my friends and they're my foes and they're my competitors. So keep your competitors close, and use each other. I don't know. It's worked really, really well for us four, and we have a hoot of a time together. We go out, we make sure that we meet, and, we've had some pretty wicked fun together as well. And we'll go to, Photo News Conference in New York together, and party together, learn together, and share some amazing experiences as well. So
Yeah, that's a great and very special relationship you got there.
mhm.
So why don't we segue a little bit and talk about the Z cameras that you're very fond of and have been an ambassador for. So how's that going?
Oh, it's awesome. I haven't touched my DSLR since I touched the Z6 and 7. As you know, I was one of the testers, and one of the ambassadors involved in the launch of the 6 and the 7. I guess it was the 7 at the time, with the 6 coming out. And I've left my D850 on my shelf since, and I sold my D5. I just went full in, and I've embraced it, and I'm absolutely in love with shooting mirrorless, especially for being able to stay on your camera longer. You're able to look through the viewfinder and stay with your subject. You're able to do video so fluently. There's picture controls, in the early morning lights when we're out there shooting, and, you can go from this side to that side. You can move, 12 feet, and you can have a 5-stop difference, in your light exposure. And, you're able to manage what you're seeing through the viewfinder and your exposure all at the same time, as and we talk about. And it's been a game changer, and it's made me a better photographer for sure. And I think it's going to make everybody a better photographer. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, I've got a Z7 also, and it's great fun to use, and it's nice to see all the stuff you can see in the viewfinder that you don't see with a DSLR. So that alone is worth a lot.
Absolutely. And then the video. We need to get you shooting more video. Everybody, you
Okay.
have the ability of just, being on your camera and you just make that little switch and you're in video mode. And slow motion, it's so forgiving. There's times that I was just up in Vancouver Island and we were out before sunrise to photograph the coastal wolves, and that's my dog eating a tuna can. If you're wondering if you're hearing that, but anyway, she's at my feet eating a can. Um, yeah, and we were out before sunrise, and there were points that there was just no way that I could film or shoot with the still, and flipping the video and being able to shoot at a 30th of a second, at 5.6, and higher ISOs, and being able to create, even though it was impossible to even think of shooting with stills. And now, if you want to walk away with anything, even if it's just for you, for the memory, maybe it might be something that you can capture that can be part of your sizzle reel, or part of your montage of your video clips. There's so many more opportunities than what we had with the DSLRs, and it's the future for sure. And they're making all the future is going to be made around the mirrorless and the new systems. Look at Jimmy. I am the cutest dog in the universe, by the way. She looks like a polar bear.
So you were mentioning that you're starting to use the teleextenders more, and I've been happy with that.
I know I have been like the anti-teleconverter forever. And when the 500 millimeter PF came out, one of the guys from Nikon suggested I try it with the 2x extender for birds, and it's like, oh, then it goes to f11, but with the higher ISOs and brighter day, it's not so critical. Um, and I thought, oh, the loss of quality, the loss of functionality, maybe with the autofocus, that sort of stuff. And I've been nothing but impressed with the 2x extender. I wouldn't use it on the 200 to 500 or a zoom. That is probably where I would not necessarily go, unless it's the new S system, 2x extender with the 70 to 200. But for the 500 and the 800, even being at f11, that extra reach has made a huge difference, especially when I'm in my kayak. I've just been loving that 1,000 millimeter hand holding. I mean, imagine saying that, Kirby. Imagine saying I'm hand holding 1,000 millimeters in my kayak, and shooting at 1600 ISO and 800th of a second, or 500th of a second. I've gone down to 250th of a second, even with 1,000 millimeters, because of the in-camera stabilization. Like you're saying numbers, or I'm saying numbers I never thought that I would ever say before. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
pretty
pretty impressive for handheld.
for hand holding. And all you have to do is, if people are questioning, and you just go to my Instagram, I tell people in my posts when I use the 2x extender, and it's hugely impressive. And the clarity, the functionality, well, just have a look, and if you think I can get sharper, then let me know. But I'm super happy with the results and what I'm seeing, and just that extra reach, that 1,000 millimeters. There haven't been too many times that I said, oh, I have too much lens. That's the thing, especially with birds. I was out shooting my kayak with the 70 to 200, the new S lens, with the 2x extender, and even at 400, I was like, oh. We had a mid-air collision fight of two eagles right above me, and I was just kind of hoping and wishing that I had a little bit more lens to pull in. But anyway, it is a phenomenal option if you have the 500 millimeter PF and a new teleconverter. Just have a look and see what it's like, because it really is impressive.
So the autofocus is still good because, I mean, the knock on the Z series in the media at least has been that the autofocus for the Z7 is not all that great.
I have a look. I haven't had any issues. It's the same. I honestly, I go, okay, would I get any better results with the 500? Likely not. Likely not. I do prefer, if I'm shooting with the 2x extender, I do prefer to shoot with this 6, just because of the higher ISO and the faster frame rate. Chances are I'm shooting some pretty wild creatures at that point. So that is more or less my preferability. But I was shooting the Z7 with the 2x and 800 millimeter with the wolves last week, and it was pretty darn impressive. And again, you can just go to my Instagram and have a look.
Is that with the last firmware upgrade? Is
Yes.
that made a difference?
Yeah, the animal, you can the eye detection, like a lot of my portraits that I shoot with are with the 85 millimeter or the 105 millimeter in particular, if I'm talking portraits for a second. And that eye detection is like bang on. When you're shooting at 1.8 or 2.2, and your focus can go to the nose and then your eyes out. Before in the past that's happened, but that eye detection is crazy fantastic. The animal eye detection is more or less built for cats and dogs. So I don't typically use it. But the other feature that I love to do, because I manual focused for years and years with birds and everything, like people couldn't understand how I could manually focus, but I did. And when I got the mirrorless, I had to shoot with the autofocus, and I fully integrated into it. But what what has really helped me is the focus peaking. And I don't know if you use focus peaking at all with the 7. A lot of people don't even know that it exists, but it's kind of like a hybrid between autofocus and manual. And so if I'm in autofocus and I take my back button focus, I press it down, I get a focus. I can manually, with my focus peaking on, holding that back focus button down, manually move my focus ring to really know that what I'm getting in focus is in focus. So if I'm photographing the coastal wolf or a bear where 5.6, and I don't want it on the nose and I don't want it on the nose bridge, I want it on the eye, I can move that focus ring so it turns into a red, or I think you can do blue or white. So whatever is in focus, is in focus by that color that is in your viewfinder around that part of the subject. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know of focus speaking, but I'd have to say I've never used it, and I'm amazed that you can do all that while you're hand holding the camera.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just because I've done it, right? And um, I probably, because I've manually focused for so long, for me it's kind of like a hybrid. I take a autofocus and then I'm able to just fine tune to make sure that I know exactly what's is in
Hmm.
focus. So it makes a huge difference. So I'm constantly pressing my back focus button and moving my focus ring as much as possible.
Huh.
So I
Okay.
highly suggest, if you have a 6 or a 7, that you look into your focus peaking and give it a try, because it really is a game changer for sure. And
Okay.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the 7, and have to confess I haven't really tried that out, but yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, and the trick is making sure that your position of your focus is on MA on your lens, and you're holding your back focus button down constantly and then you're moving your focus ring, and all you have to do is go through your menu to set the focus peaking. And you can do it on light, normal, or high, and you can change the color based on what your preference is, or based on, if you're shooting green, you might want white, or if you're in a darker situation, the green or the red might not be strong enough, so you might want the white. So I use red most of the time, and it really is it's absolutely fabulous.
Okay. good to know. Well, going back to the business side of things for a little bit, what advice would you have for someone who wants to get into wildlife photography these days?
Practice, 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 fine tune and put yourself out there. Make yourself different from everyone else. Try to create differently and really build your portfolio and your style and stay true to it and commit, dream, and don't stop shooting. Like it's just a constant. I'm learning all the time. And I know just even from if I go back, I'm looking through my 800 millimeter with the 2 times the 1600. I'm looking at a coastal wolf and it's running right to me. You're looking through 1600 millimeters. It's a whole different ball game, right? Even just trying to find the subject. Oftentimes I have to take my eye off and then look down again. So it's just constantly learning and practicing on small creatures. If you don't have the opportunity to go to somewhere far away and beautiful or exotic, you don't need to. Just try and find somewhere in a park or a tree and find animals that you can photograph and practice on. Even trying to find the dragonflies and something moving. It's a constant. You should be shooting all the time. If you want to be a wildlife photographer, you need to be shooting all the time and then putting yourself out there we talked about stock and magazines drying up. It's not the same as what it was, but now we have social media. There are companies looking for visuals and for photographers, so it's just making sure that you're present and that you're on social media as well. I think if you're a wildlife photographer, your work isn't going to do any good sitting on your computer. You got to get yourself out there, build a strong website, do some blogging, do some YouTubing. Just it's a constant work in progress for sure. Just I think more so, just circling back, build your style and stay true to it and put yourself out there, basically.
Speaking of social media, what's your involvement?
I'm heavy into Instagram, and I do that every day if I'm able. If I'm not in the field, I'm posting every day. Sometimes 2 times a day, but most times it's just once a day. I try to show different images, different species that I photographed, and take people in different directions. And it's quite interesting when you start to see your followers and how they react, and if you lose followers because if I post a portrait, most of my followers are for wildlife. I'll see my numbers go down. Just understanding when to post, how to post, what works, what doesn't, really learn from that as well. So Instagram, Facebook, I'm on Michelle Valberg Photography as well. I had Michelle Valberg, I still do, but I reached 5,000 people, and then they don't allow you to have any more friends, so I had to make a business page. YouTube, I'm really trying, Kirby, to do more, and blogging as well. And I'm rebuilding my website, so it never stops, no matter if there's a pandemic or not. Yeah, it never stops. So as much as I can, I put myself out there and in front and tag people, and you just enter contests. Um, and so many photographers are turning their attention from, they're not able to do workshops, and they're now doing workshops online and offering courses, and more so than ever, you're able to zoom in on conferences and hear photographers from all over the world speak. So use as much of that as you can as well, because it's a great opportunity to learn from. Everybody's looking at ways to get themselves out there now, and like you have this podcast, and it's just a great way to introduce people to other photographers and the way that they work. We're also different.
Yeah. So do Instagram followers transition into business income, or is it just name recognition?
I think they go hand in hand. When you're putting yourself out there and you're getting recognition as a wildlife photographer or nature photographer or whatever it is, the type of photographer that you are, the reach that you're getting is worldwide. So that obviously helps. And most people who are looking for influencers or to buy your work or whatever are looking at your sociability and what and how many followers you might have and what reach that you have. It is more important now and harder to gain those followers as well. It's not easy to gain followers on a consistent basis. So yeah, a lot of times I sell work. People are interested in my work or companies, or they want to use your work and or they steal your work. I mean, there's there's yes, there are good things and bad things about many different things, but there's obviously there's that happens as well. But yeah, it and really what people want to know, it's not just your website anymore, it's your website and or even above your website, it's what's your reach, how many Instagram followers you have, what's your other handle with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and your audiences are everywhere as well. Like LinkedIn has been really fantastic for portraits and for jobs. And that's a whole different business market. And then you have Twitter, that's a little bit of a draw from many different directions. And then you have Facebook, that's much more personal, and then you have Instagram, that's more all about your work and not about what you eat or where you've been or whatever the information you're sharing, but it's really driven towards photography and your work that you're doing in your portfolio. So, it's important to know your audience there as well. But LinkedIn has been really, really fantastic for me as well.
Good. Yeah, I've noticed you're on LinkedIn quite a bit.
Yeah, and when because I was supposed to be in the Arctic right now, and I was supposed to be in Greenland, Norway, and Iceland, and then going to Churchill and Antarctica and all that. I don't want to talk about that too much because I might cry, but I was able to say, hey, I'm not in the Arctic, so I'm doing portraits, and I did a little 30-second video and just using stills of portraits, examples, and I got a couple of jobs out of it, which is great.
Yeah, good.
Mhm.
So is blogging still a viable way to get customers, do you think?
Yeah, and especially if you're in the products, they're all looking, whether it's a lens coat or think tank or tripods or whatever it is. I mean, they're all looking at ways to get their name out and to sell product, and they're looking for photographers to take that on. I mean, the magazines aren't, as you said, out as much, and they're the advertising world is changing so much. So blogging, what it can do is you can give that kind of information. You can talk about a shoot maybe more so than just a one image and a quick snippet, but maybe you have like the story of the morning of we were surrounded by coastal wolves before sunrise, and they surrounded us and they started barking and howling, and then we found our way into the blind. They're you know and then what pursued after that, and then the first face-to-face encounter. So the blog kind of gives you, I think, that option there. When people are going to a blog, they might think that they have more to read, that there's more to the story, and then you can start to build your affiliates as well. So if you're using this tripod or you're using that lens coat, or then you can start to build your portfolio and draw people into your website and build up your numbers.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
daunting, isn't it? Right? It's all of this is so daunting. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot to it, but maybe it's do what you can while you can, and and don't think you have to do everything by tomorrow. That's what I have to keep reminding myself, because I'm rebuilding my website right now, which is painful, but
Yeah.
you want
Been
it
doing,
all tomorrow, right? Yeah.
doing some of that myself this summer, and yeah, pain is the right word.
Yeah.
So do you do any vlogging with a V?
No, I'm not really. I've done a couple of, of the vlogging things or live Instagram, but I'm not so good at doing that. But I just, I'm just not good at doing that. I don't like, I, I prefer other people in front of my camera than me. So, but I know, and it's as soon as you start to give a personal account of your story, um, that's when people really react to. I mean, when you show this exotic animal that, like I'll just because I just came back from the coastal wolf, people want to know, well, how did you get there, or what was it like to look a wolf in the eyes, or what was the craziest experience of it? And as soon as you start to give that BTS and a little bit more look at behind the image that you show, that's what people ultimately want and react to
Oh,
most, right?
yeah,
Do
yeah, seems to be.
you-
Well, tell everyone where to find you once more. You mentioned it in passing, but in case anybody missed it.
Okay, my website is michellevalberg.com. Give me a little bit. It's up, but anyway, it's not secure right now. So I'm working on building that back up. And Instagram is Michelle Valberg Photography, where I'm posting every day. Facebook is Michelle Valberg Photography. Twitter is Michelle Valberg. LinkedIn is Michelle Valberg, and YouTube is Michelle Valberg. So I'm pretty easy to find out there. There are no other Michelle Valberg photographers right now, and it's not a very common name. So I hope that there won't be any other Michelle Valbergs. Anyway, so I continue to be out there, and I welcome anyone if they want to send me a message or have a chat or ask me anything about the Z camera, the 6 or 7. To I'm happy to chat about that.
And speaking of the Z cameras again, anything you were able to comment on as far as what's coming?
No, and I can't wait to find out. It's hard to imagine what's next, and it's hard to imagine the improvements on what they've already got on the 6 and the 7. And yeah, I have nothing to comment, but I look forward to the next versions, whatever and whenever they are, for sure.
Yeah, the Z8 or Z9 or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, it's super exciting times. I mean, and if anyone's out there, wondering if they should make the leap, or it's a difficult one, but honestly, it's whatever you're comfortable with. And a lot of people had just invested in the D850, and then the 7 came out, and it was like, no, I'm not changing over. And obviously budget is a huge part of this, but the one thing about Nikon is they've come out with the Z50 and the 5. They're lowering the pro end to the point that it's entry level. But I've worked with both, and they're phenomenal cameras. So it'll be interesting to see what is next. But also, it really doesn't matter what you're shooting, as long as you're happy and you love what you do, and you're happy with the system that you have. But if you have an opportunity to try mirrorless, it'll make I think it's going to make everybody a better photographer. I really do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So you didn't mention what your handle is on YouTube.
It's Michelle Valberg. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Make it
yeah,
easy.
yeah. Well, and that's one thing that as photographers, I think you have to. Anyway, it's my philosophy is you really have to brand yourself. Brand your name, not another name. It's important to brand who you are as an individual, so you stand out as a photographer. So that's why I keep everything in the name of me.
So what kind of stuff are you putting up on YouTube?
I try to put together, when I travel, I do a lot of video, and I try to put together like a compilation of, like, I had an amazing season on my lake, with tons of video and stills. So I just try to put together little snippets, or if I have giraffes necking, amazing slow motion. I actually did some ramping on it. I learned how to do that during isolation, and just stuff that sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's a minute, or if it's my not-for-profit and Project North, there's stories there about what I've done with the Arctic and hockey, and yeah. So I just need to be a little bit more consistent with YouTube and put up more video work. So, but editing is it's hard enough to edit stills. To get into the editing of videos, you need the time and the commitment for that, for sure.
Yeah, it's definite learning curve with Premiere Pro. If that's what you're using, that's what I'm using.
Yeah, but once you start, like, even it's so easy. Like, okay, how do I crop, or how do I speed ramp, and YouTube, right? How do you speed ramp? And then you're given the lesson right there. So it's not like you have to go to manuals, but you can learn a lot. I don't know if you do that, but man, have I ever learned a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely use YouTube a lot, and if I run into a roadblock, that's where I go, and usually somebody's got an answer for you,
Yeah, if somebody has an answer for you on YouTube all the time, right? Yeah,
right? Yep.
yeah. So true. Aren't we lucky? What a world we live in.
Yeah.
You know, just to finish, I started with video in my business, and so I did video and photography, and it went from like VHS and beta, and old big massive video cameras to a small little editing machine that would run the VHSs back and forth. And then I went digital, and I got the first Amiga editing system that used the timeline that we use now, but it would run the VHS machines, and then you would have to go through like 2 hour tape and put your cut points in, and it would run and then run back and then run forward and then find the cut point and then run back, and like you could put together a 2 hour video, and it busts at a minute, or an hour 50 or something, and then you would have to start it all over again. Like, it's amazing to see what and how easy it is right now. So just
Yeah.
I'm dating myself for sure, but man, what a change. But what I also love is, it's kind of like Photoshop. It's still taking what we used to do in the darkroom and in the dodge and the burn and the contrast and everything else, and making it so much easier. But it's also, yeah, it's nice to know the background of where it's all come from and how you started, and how that's kind of, been part of the dots, and how it's still been used. I don't know how to describe that, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. It's such a,
Yeah.
so you can only imagine what's in the future. It'd be hard to know.
Yeah. Well, better let you run, I guess. Appreciate all the info, and it's been great talking to you again. Uh, Show notes are available for both the audio and video versions of this podcast, and they can be found at www.flanaganphotos.com, spelled FLANAGANFOTOS. And both versions of the podcast can be found on my website as well. Otherwise, the video can be found on YouTube under Flanagan Photos, and the audio version can be found in iTunes and most RSS feeds as Photographing the West. We'll be back on September 30th with an episode on owl photography featuring Izzy Edwards. Tune in then, and bye for now.